Subnetting is dividing a bigger network into smaller network, and I have cleared the concept of subnetting with all of you in both of my sessions, right? With an example. So even the CIDR is also considered in a part of a subnetting. What is CIDR? CIDR is my classless addressing, correct? So this is what my subnetting over here. What I say is I take an IP address and then I decide upon how many subnets I require, and then depending upon the class of IP address, the number of bits are borrowed from the host part to divide the network into sub networks, right? I hope you remember this. So number of we keep the number of bits, fixed number of bits equal to the 2 raised to power of the subnets which we required, right? So that is what is the calculation for subnetting. In fact, the same for the classless addressing is applicable, as the classless addressing is represented at x dot y dot z dot w slash n, where n represents the number of bits present in the block or a network, right? So over here, what we do, when I give slash 28, then my network will have 28 bits, and when a host part will have 32 minus 28, that is 4 bits, and which will comprise a complete network for us, right? So over here, the number of host will be the number of bits, so 2 raised to the number of bits which are given for the host, that is 2 raised to 4, which is equal to 16. And then we will be calculating the mask for this particular subnet as setting all the network bits as 1 and host bit as 0. So we will be setting this 28 bits as 1s and remaining bit as 0. So that will come to 255.255.255.240, right? And my block ID will be my IP address and with my mask, that is going to give me my block ID, right? So this is how my classless, the CIDR addressing is done. So today we will see different examples of this subnetting. So let me go with the subnetting examples. In fact, the subnetting example means initially we will be just looking into finding the how to find the class for the given IP address. So over here, okay, just let me share the code with you all first. Give me some time. Okay, so over here you can see the code in which we are first taking the IP address from the user, right? And then checking the class related to that IP address, fine. So whatever IP address entered by the user, its first byte is extracted, right? That first byte is extracted, and that first byte is checked with this 127, then 128 to 191, then 192 to 223, 224 to 239, and 240 to 254. I hope you all know that these are the ranges of the classes which we have already seen. So in the classful addressing, we have few classes. The classes are A, B, C, D, E, and the ranges of these classes are predefined. The first byte of my IP address decides the class for that particular IP address. So over here in my code, once I take a IP address from the user, the class of the IP address is to be verified. So I will be taking the first byte. Here I have written the code as ip.substring, which is going to give me the first byte of my IP address. So first byte of an IP address is extracted, and the class for that particular IP address is checked, right? So the class A, the IP address, so if this is belongs to class A, then the mask will be 255.0.0.0. If it's class B, then mask is 255.255.0.0. And if it belongs to class C, then the mask will be 255.255.255.0. The 224 to 239 is my class D, and 242 to 254 is my class E, which is for the experimental purpose. So this is how I will be finding the class of my IP address. And once I find the class of an IP address, I will be finding the first IP address of the block and the last IP address of the block, which is going to be my broadcast address. So very simple to find out all these quantities, right? So let me first go with the compilation of this code and execution of a code. So for compilation of a Java code, I will be entering the command as javac and my subnet, or that actually the name is misleading. It is actually just finding the class of the given IP address and the first IP address and last IP address of that particular class. So let me compile the code. So javac subnet1.java, and then I will be getting the dot class file from after the compilation. And now let me execute that dot class file. So dot class file will be executed with Java and then subnet, the name of the class, right? So Java subnet1. So enter the IP address. So let me enter the IP address as 129.23.45.23, correct? So from here you can see that this particular IP address is belongs to class B. See, you can see it is printed over here, the class B IP address. Then my subnet mask for it is 255.255.0.0. The first IP address of the block will be 129.23.0.0 because it is a class B IP address. So what I will do, I will be ending my IP address with the subnet mask to get the first IP address, and in the last IP address, what I will do, I will be putting all ones at the host part of the IP address. So host part of IP address are last 2 bits. So I will be putting all ones over there. So my last IP address, that is my broadcast IP address, is 129.23.255.255. So this is the program mainly for finding the class of IP address, subnet mask of IP address, and then finding the first IP address which belongs to the network. And this particular, the first IP address of the block is also known as a network address, right? So over here, the network address, this particular network will be having the address as 129.23.0.0. What does it mean is, suppose this particular IP address, the IP address I have entered as 129.23.45.23. This is belongs to one of the organization whose one of the host is known with this given IP address. Then what will be the organization's network address? The organization's network address is the first IP address which belongs to that particular block. So that is 129.23.0.0. And the broadcast address, the direct the limited broadcast address will be 129.23.255.255. So this is how I will be finding the class, the network address, the subnet mask, and the broadcast address for the given block, correct? Now after this we will be looking at the subnetting part. Right, now let's go at the subnetting part. So over here in the subnetting, what I am performing is, here again I will be taking the IP address from the user, then I am extracting the first decimal of the IP address to find out the class of the given IP address, correct? Now with this, the next important part is I will be asking the user to enter the number of subnets which are required by the user, correct? Let me go to the Excel. So over here you can see that what I have asked. So I have asked that I have said the 2 subnets from the above network. So I need to divide this bigger network into 2 subnets. So like this, over here I will be asking the user to enter the number of subnets which are required, correct? Now number of subnets which are required is given. अब आगे क्या है कि ये नंबर ऑफ सबनेट्स कितने चाहिए, उसके लिए बिट्स कितने रिजर्व करने हैं आपको, वो बिट्स कैसे पता चलेंगे आपको कितने रिजर्व बिट्स करने होस्ट साइड के? सो दैट विल बी 2 raised to the power which is equal to the number of subnets required. So that formula is over here. So that is my formula for this calculation of mask, correct? So how this gives? So this is calculated as 2 raised to something is equal to number of subnets, right? And that is going to get rounded off. So it is going to give me the number of bits required for the address, correct? Now here again, what we are doing, so number of bits, so I will be calculating the, so this is going to give me the number of bits required for the address, and then I will be calculating the total number of ones in the subnet mask. So the aim for this particular program is calculating the total number of ones which are there in my given subnet. So with this example, we can see that here we have calculated the total number of ones which are required, correct? So how so host में से कितना part लेना है? 2 parts लेके those many number of the host में से single bit लेंगे हम. Why? Because we need 2 subnets only. So those many number of ones will be there for a given address, correct? For a given address. So this is my subnet.java. So let me execute this code also. Java C subnet.java and then Java subnet. So here IP address, I want to give on some IP address. So it will be say 234.45.45. The number of subnets, suppose I need 13 subnets. अब 13 subnets के लिए मुझे बताओ number of bits के addresses के कितने होने चाहिए? So number of bits over here for the addresses will be 4. Why? Because 2 raised to 4 which is equal to 16 which is nearby to 13. So number of bits which are required for address is going to be 4. Correct? Number of bits required for the addressing is going to be 4. Right? So this is how my calculation will be done over here. Even we can continue this code with finding the classes also. That is also done over here. Now let me go back and see the code for this CIDR. Right? So for CIDR, so we have the code of subnet calculator for CIDR. So let me execute the code again. So over here, first what we have to do, we have to enter the IP address. So let me enter the IP address which we have taken in the class itself. So it is 204, it is 204.40.30.40/28/28. And once I say calculate, so it will be calculating my subnet mask, it will be calculating my network address, broadcast address, then number of subnets currently are 0, number of host per subnet is 16 and the class of the network. I hope you remember how to calculate this. Let me revise it again. So this /28, it means that number of ones for the network part will have 28 bits. So this is all about 32 minus 28. So host part will be 32 minus 28. So my subnet mask will be 28 ones. So that is going to be my 255.255.255.240. Right? My broadcast address will be, it will be this 204.40.30.255. That is going to be my broadcast address. So this is how I am going to calculate the CIDR, that is the subnet mask and the network address, broadcast address and network class for the given network. I will be sharing all these codes to you also. So I hope this subnetting part is clear with every one of you.